Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of my Well Balanced series. Today we are talking to Jensen, or I'm talking to Jensen, from Test Don't Guess, and we're going to be talking all about functional lab work and kind of like where to start and exactly the ones that are the most beneficial, ones to maybe stay away from, pricing, all of that. So, got my little questionnaire here. We're going to talk about that. But if you're wanting to learn about other episodes, you can go back to the my IGTV. They're all saved there from past professionals that I've talked to, and this episode in this series is all just about talking to people to get different perspectives on health and show that it's all about balance and it's all about wellness and all the things that we need to focus on. So as soon as Jensen hops in here, I will share my screen with her. Hopefully she is not having any technical difficulty. Can't text her because I've got to use my phone to do this. So let's see here. Okay.
Hey,
Hi, Jensen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for having me. This is like such an honor.
Of course.
Yeah,
I love doing lives. They're just so interactive, and I think it's important to share the information, on like a deeper level. Sometimes I think the
yeah,
posts can be kind of overwhelming for people, so I love connecting. So thanks for being here.
yeah, no problem at all.
So for those listening, this is a functional blood work type of testing, all about that kind of stuff. I definitely want to hear more about you, Jensen, kind of what got you started and what, you're doing now. And I have our little questions. There were some questions that came in yesterday too. So we'll
Okay.
definitely talk about those as well. So tell us a little bit about your story, kind of like what got you started into everything. First of
Yeah,
all, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Um, and kind of just like, the whole shebang.
Sure. So I'm an NTP, an FNTP actually. I guess I should specify that because I was in one of the last classes before everything changed with COVID. So
Okay.
I'm an FNTP and I got into this whole world because of my own journey with endometriosis. I struggled for over 10 years, going to doctors, being told that birth control was the only option, had 3 different surgeries, all to find out that all of my symptoms went away when I started taking magnesium.
Wow.
Literally. Like, I don't even have a cramp anymore. And
What
nobody ever
type
mentioned
of
that.
magnesium? I know that's another question people typically ask.
Oh, yeah. So, glycinate
Okay.
is what's worked really well for me. But actually, right now, I'm liking Mag SRT from Jigsaw. I don't know if
Okay.
you're familiar
Yep.
with that one. It's like a time released one, and I've just really liked that one. So, I guess that's malate. But usually, I recommend glycinate.
Okay.
Um, but so that's what got me into this whole functional world was I was trying to cure my endometriosis on my own forever. I tried every diet, every single thing possible. And then I joined the NTA and loved every second of it. Totally opened up a world to me that I didn't even know existed, met people that I was like, I didn't know people like this were out there. I didn't know people cared about the same stuff that I did because Instagram wasn't even like as big as it is now. And
Right.
so yeah, I did the NTA program, I graduated, and because of my experience with magnesium, when I heard about HTMA, um, I was like, well, first of all, I didn't know that I even had access to testing when I graduated from the NTA. That wasn't really mentioned that like you get access to all these labs, and I'm such a data person. Like I absolutely love data. And so that was so appealing to me. And the first one that I heard of was HTMA. And the
Okay.
fact that it had to do with minerals, hair tissue mineral analysis, the fact that it had to do with minerals and my experience with magnesium, I was like, I'm all in. Like, teach me how this works. So I actually took my first HTMA course. Um, I started it at 41 weeks, 3 days pregnant. I was like ready to pop and just like needed something to take my brain off of everything. So I started my first HTMA course then, went really well. And then I started working with clients, got some more HTMA reports in that were a little bit confusing. And so I needed a kind of a more in-depth HTMA course. And then I was still a little bit confused. And so, and kind of overwhelmed. I had so many clients coming because they were so interested in HTMA, and it was taking me way too long to do the analysis for them. So I created this like Excel sheet that pulled out all these patterns from the data just because I was like needing something like that. And I decided, I was like, I wonder if anybody else would want this. And then a lot of people wanted it. And then people were asking, oh, could there be a course that goes along with this? And so basically what led me to where I'm at today is this silly little Excel sheet that really saved people a lot of time. And I realized that if I built an app, instead of an Excel sheet, obviously, if I built an app, I could actually teach people how to use HTMA in an easier, quicker way than I had learned it. I was like, oh, if this pulls out all this data for you, that's the big gist of it. And so, I created Instant HTMA Professional, the course, and it includes the app. And now I support other practitioners while they're learning to use HTMA in their practice. So that's like my main thing now. I only see
I love
one-on-one
that.
clients sometimes.
Yeah,
So
I didn't even realize that. Like I've known other practitioners who've used HTMA, but I've never realized it was so the analysis part of it was so intense. And
yeah,
so when I obviously learned about you, I was like, wow, this like anything to make my life easier, I'm all about.
I know. I'm like obsessed with automating anything I can. Like, let's
For
plug
sure.
it in. Let's not have to memorize so much. Like, it's okay. You can use a tool that will pull out all the good data for you. And then you have to know what to do with that data. But I mean, why not rely on something like that instead of spending like a year, 2 years trying to understand all the intricacies of minerals? Like, there's just so much to it. So
Well, I
the
feel like
app
that's with
does that
anything.
for
Like
us.
you can get like you can get into some serious rabbit holes, you know, and like the
Yeah.
average person isn't gonna want to learn any like they're just not. They're just not gonna
Yeah.
sustainably absorb it and or be passionate about it to want to dive super deep. So I think like focusing on the big picture and like the main ones that are standing out
Yep.
and of course supporting foundations as the NTA
Yep.
preaches. Um, you know, it's like we're all balanced. We're gonna have those days when we're not gonna eat healthy at all, and that's just the reality. But it's
Yep.
just how can we 80 to 90% of the time support our bodies, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's really cool. So for those listening, explain kind of like the importance of minerals in our body, because I think a lot of people that's kind of a newer, I never even knew that about them at all
Yeah.
until recently, and then kind of how that ties into HTMA and exactly what that test is and what it does, just because I feel like it's kind of a new concept to some people.
Sure. Yeah. So minerals are the spark plugs of our body. So literally nothing happens without different enzyme reactions happening because of minerals. And so they are like, they are affecting your body on this cellular level. So the main minerals that most people have heard of are calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. And the way that those are in balance with each other is what really matters. It's not whether you have all this calcium, it's do you have enough calcium in relation to your magnesium? And do you have enough in relation to your potassium? And they all affect different, obviously they are the spark plugs of the entire body, but there are certain minerals and mineral ratios that are correlated with different specific pieces of the body. So for example, the calcium to potassium ratio tells us about how your thyroid is functioning because of cell permeability. And so we go into a lot of that in my course, but that's why, I mean, minerals are just, I mean, they're foundational to our health. They're one of the five foundations from the NTA. And so hair tissue mineral analysis is a test. It's a hair test. So it's more than just a single hair. I think that's one misconception that happens. It's more than just like clicking a a thing of hair, you have to take like small little chunks, like nobody can ever tell that they're gone. But you take them from different spots around your head and you only send in the top half inch or so of hair to the lab. So you trim off all the rest because that's the most recent hair growth.
Okay.
And that gives us the most recent information about the body. So you get it gives you a cumulative amount of information from the last 3 months is what we typically say, like 2 to 3 months of information about the mineral status in your body. The HTMA test shows, it tests for like 30, more than 30 different minerals. So more than just calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. There's also like manganese and molybdenum and rubidium and like all of these kind of more trace ones. And then it also tests for heavy metals. So what it's testing for in your hair is what is getting rid of what's coming out in your body. So this is like one of the big misconceptions where if like a doctor is trying to read an HTMA test and they're looking at it and they see, oh, your calcium is really high, you don't need any more calcium. That's not the case. This is what your body is getting rid of. So this is why it gets very complicated, because you don't read the results at face value. So, yeah, that's HTMA. Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what would you say is like some of the common scenarios that you see, and typically maybe some lifestyle things that people are doing that are contributing to those deficiencies or imbalances?
Sure. I'm trying to think. So, stress is a huge thing that affects our mineral levels. And I think HTMA is really interesting because it shows you in a tangible way how stress is affecting your body. So, for example, magnesium gets depleted from stress and from other things, but one of the main things that depletes magnesium is from stress. So, by looking at an HTMA test, you're able to see how, like, what your magnesium status is, and there's like different stress patterns and things that can be shown. And you can show somebody, here's how, like, you might feel stressed, but like this is how it's actually affecting your body from a tangible perspective. But different things that affect mineral levels are, digestion is a big one, and blood sugar. It's like all the foundations that we focus on. So that's why I say HTMA is just so incredibly foundational, because like the main ratios tell us about thyroid health. They tell us about being in a parasympathetic or asympathetic dominant state, like where you kind of lean. It tells you about your adrenal health, your blood sugar, your digestion, your stress, and whether you tend towards viral or bacterial infections. So it's like kind of everything. So I'm not really sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, I was wasn't sure if there was like a big, like besides stress, of course.
Yeah, stress is a big one.
That is there. And for those listening, the foundations that we're talking about are blood sugar, digestion, fatty acids, minerals, and hydration. Yeah. So those are typically the ones that, people are always like, oh, I want to go get testing and do this and that. And it's like, well, even if you do testing, which can be very informative and allow you to really get that specific information, the foundations are so important because you have to address them. You can't just stand alone, do testing, and expect things to just miraculously change.
Exactly. But HTMA will show you what you're doing, how you're fixing your blood sugar, how you're working on your blood sugar. You can see it from the mineral perspective that your calcium magnesium ratio is going to come into balance. And so
I definitely think having the data is really cool, because people love numbers and they just love seeing how their body's improving. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so some of the questions were, kind of like, where do I start? How do I look for functional blood work? And besides HTMA, whether you have even, experience or knowledge and other things like popular ones like food sensitivity testing or GI maps or things like that, what would you say, hands down, would be something to do first and foremost if someone was going into this blind? And HTMA can definitely be an option for sure.
Yeah. So somebody, meaning like a practitioner that's wanting to add something like this to their practice, or somebody who is like struggling with their health?
I think the second one.
Okay. Somebody who's struggling with their health. Obviously working with somebody like you or I'm partial to NTPs, of course, because I do really like the foundational stuff. But I always recommend starting with HTMA or finding somebody who can help you from a functional blood chemistry side. So functional blood chemistry is different than the ranges that you get from your doctor. So when you go to your doctor and they say, oh, your thyroid looks fine, but you know that you're struggling, you've done the Dr. Google thing and you know you're struggling with something related to your thyroid, but your doctor just said that you're fine. Functional blood chemistry looks at it from a like, are you in the optimal range versus are you in a diseased state? It tries to keep you out of the disease state by saying, hey, you're trending in this way, and this is what we're going to do to fix that so that you don't wind up in a diseased state. So I recommend people either find an HTMA practitioner or somebody who runs functional blood tests and start there. The other testing, like GI maps, Dutch testing for hormones, food sensitivity, all of those are going to be, first of all, very expensive, like $400, $500 just for the test alone. And I personally don't think that they're necessary until we've looked at the foundations of with the HTMA and with the blood work and figured out what's going on. There are definitely times for a GI map to be run. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not the first thing to jump to, is my opinion.
Interesting. Okay. And we talked about price a little bit, but like besides those, what would HTMA typically run someone to do?
So most of the people that are going through my course are offering it between $199 to $299 for the test and a consult together.
And then do people typically come? Is that something that you do, every 6 months with someone typically, or every few weeks? How often do people usually do
Yeah,
that?
so it's recommended to retest every 3 to 4 months, and
Okay.
it can be used as like a base, or it can be used as like a baseline test and like what's the word I'm looking for? Just like monitoring, like seeing how your minerals are changing. And actually, I am actually this week, I don't know if anybody on your, anybody who's watching would be interested in this, but if you're a current student of any of the nutrition programs, I'm launching this week. I have 9 practitioners from my course that are it's called HTMA for students. So I'm pairing up people in my course with students who want to get their HTMA test done. And you want to do it?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, that will all be launched actually by the end of this week, and it's only $199 for students to get the test and a full consult, protocol, all the recommendations based on the HTMA results.
That's awesome. I love
So
that.
yeah.
Uh, well, okay, so I want to talk about like this came to me while I was thinking. Minerals and hormones. So I know like typically people, especially women, are like, oh, my hormones are imbalanced. I want to address my hormones. So what happens when, or explain the relationship between the two, and then kind of like why you'd recommend maybe doing a HTMA first versus going straight down to doing like a women's panel for all the typical things you would go for.
Yeah, so like a serum, like blood panel for
Yes.
hormones. So the thing that I want to say about HTMA just in general is it is not a diagnostic test. So it gives us a lot of really good information. It gives us like a window into the cells in the body, but I typically recommend using it in tandem with other tests, not this is the only thing that you're going to need. So, but from a hormone perspective, the main minerals that you're going to be looking at are iron, zinc, and copper on the HTMA. And this is like a whole huge topic, but copper imbalance is a really, really, really big deal, and because of copper's relationship with estrogen and zinc's relationship with progesterone or testosterone in men. And so there are actually 21 different indicators for copper imbalance on an HTMA test. And if we know that those are present based on someone's symptoms and the actual markers being present, we know what to prioritize with their protocol. And And so, yeah, copper imbalance is just such a huge topic. But that would be the main thing from a hormonal perspective from
And
HT.
from that, do you see, I think the iron overload is a very big topic now too, and just kind of
Yeah,
like learning more about that. People tend to want to take iron and all that stuff when we've
yeah,
actually need to not do that. So
right.
can you explain
You're
that?
like up to date on everything. I love it. I
I'm
love it.
trying. I'm really
Yeah,
trying.
yeah.
Um, can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that's something that's really interesting.
Yeah, so well, from an HTMA perspective, and I will say I'm not the expert on iron. Um, I there are other people that are much more well versed in this than I am, because on HTMA there is an iron marker, but I don't recommend using it to really. I mean, it gives us like very little information, and so I always recommend using blood for understanding iron. But basically, there's a relationship between copper and iron, and you need copper to be able to use iron in your like use the iron in your from your food. And a lot of people are having issues with copper. Like they're having issues there's like either an excess of bio unavailable copper or a lack of copper. So it gives you like deficiency and um, too much and too little symptoms, basically. It's very weird.
Yeah. No, it's
So,
very interesting. I think most
sorry.
people are like, oh, I don't have enough iron or,
Yeah,
enough of this. And it's like, well, there are
no,
cofactors that are involved and things that have to be in play
yeah,
for absorption. And it's
right.
crazy. It's overwhelming, honestly.
So you definitely want to look at copper if somebody tells you that you're anemic and that you need to take iron, you need to pause and start looking at copper and you need to figure out if your bile is working well and how your adrenal health is, because both of those are directly related with your copper
Very interesting.
in your body. So
Hmm,
yeah.
interesting. Um, okay, I had another question that I just lost, so I'll come back to that. But in particular to finding practitioners in your area. So obviously there's social media now where you can do a lot of searching, but is there any sort of way to find individual people that do offer HTMA, whether there's like some sort of platform or things that you'd recommend for people to kind of find that?
Yeah, so funny you should ask. I'm actually working on a directory website right now that will give people the ability to find practitioners that work with certain labs. So let's say you're looking for somebody to run like a GI map or an HTMA, that you'll be able to go on there and find them. So that
That's
should be
awesome.
coming out in the next month. That's like not super public information, but I guess it is now.
Hey, that's super
So
helpful because I think it's,
yeah,
will that be like determined by, zip code and you can kind of put in your zip code and see?
well, yeah. So, I mean, I would say the vast majority of practitioners are working with people remotely now because,
True.
um, and so you don't actually have to work with somebody who is in your zip code. You'll have that ability to be able to search for somebody near you if that's what you're looking for. But the way that these tests work is you just ship them to your client. You either drop ship them from the website. So like for the gut tests or that kind of thing, then you just order it to be sent to your client. They take the sample at their house, they send it direct to the lab, and then you get the results in your email. But with HTMA, the HTMA practitioner would send the kit to the client, and then so it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
So
makes
you don't
sense.
have to work with somebody that's necessarily in your area.
I think that is one of the coolest things that's going in our direction in society. Like we can impact people all over the world.
I know. Yeah, it's
So,
amazing. There are some states that have restrictions, specifically on lab testing. The main state is New York. They have laws that make it where it's very, very, very difficult to get lab testing done outside of a doctor there.
okay, good to know.
Yep.
Um, all right, so I have a final question that came back to me was minerals in general, right? We talk about how their stress can deplete them and all this other thing. And of course, we want to get the clear picture from testing to see those imbalances and that progression. But like for day-to-day mineral restoration and how we can actually implement lifestyle practices that can help balance those. and all of that. So what would you say are some of your top recommendations for the average person just trying to get some more minerals in their life?
Sure. So I'm a big fan of electrolytes. So making sure that if you're exercising and you're sweating a lot, or if you know that your adrenals are struggling, you feel like your adrenals are struggling, adding electrolytes to your drinks is a great way to start. That's going to give you sodium, potassium, magnesium, kind of depends on which one you're going with. I personally really like Element Tea. I
Yeah,
think those taste the best.
they have good flavors.
Yeah. And so I would say that would be a great way, because that just helps you stay hydrated and it helps with your mineral balance. And I would say most people could really use some more potassium in their diet. Just in general, that's probably the most common thing, because based on HTMA testing, well, I won't go into all of that, but the most common results that we see from HTMA tests tell us that somebody needs more potassium. So increasing potassium in your diet is pretty much never going to be a bad thing. And I don't feel like it's focused on very much. So those like adrenal cocktails where you add potassium in the form of like cream of tartar, that's like fantastic.
Love that.
There's a lot of potassium in coconut water. So yeah, increasing potassium foods is really great.
And just on the note of sea salt and like kind of like that whole thing. So explaining, the benefit of adding like unrefined sea salt to your water and why something like table salt wouldn't be the same. And then kind of like even Himalayan pink salt, like what's the craze with that? But as we know, it's something that's actually very beneficial.
Yeah, well, I mean, table salt has been depleted of like all of its minerals. I mean, it's been bleached, it's just been processed, it's just not in its whole form. And so if we're able to switch to something like sea salt, but you want to make sure you get like a pure sea salt, because of the problems with our oceans. So there's always so many levels to these things, but
Right.
because I mean, there's issues with I know there's controversy between the Himalayan pink salt and sea salt. I do lean more towards just pure sea salt. I like the brand Redmond's, typically. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great way to get trace amounts of all of those minerals that we talked about, and which helps your body from a cellular level. So it's just the easiest way to make sure that you're getting trace amounts of those minerals.
I think one thing that I've seen a lot more is like people fighting, oh, well, the sea salt's going to raise my blood pressure and all this kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Like, what's your argument there? Or like, what is like, like, how do you tackle that?
Yeah. I mean, it's not, first of all. It's not going to raise your blood pressure. I feel like that's just based on bad science that was put in the wrong hands. But I mean, I say just try it. I mean,
When it's so minimal, like it's not like you're consuming tablespoons of it. And I think it's
right.
funny when people are I put up a TikTok video about adding the sea salt to your water and it went nuts. Like it's had like over 300,000 people watch that video and people are arguing each other about it. And I was like, let's just calm down here.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
I
pretty
think
funny.
it's just so bio individual. And I think that's why I'm struggling to have an answer, because I mean, some people don't need sea salt, or some people don't need added salt. And some people can really benefit from it. The vast majority of people can benefit from it. But I
Absolutely.
mean, there's always going to be contraindications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you chatting with me,
Yeah.
and I just want to finish with kind of how people, both practitioners,
Yeah.
and if you still work with any clients or any of that kind of thing, how people can find you, support you, and all of that.
Yeah. So I'm at Testone Guests on Instagram, and I help functional practitioners, unlicensed, specifically unlicensed functional practitioners, navigate the world of lab testing. So you can follow me there, and you can find more information about my course, everything that has to do with HTMA at functionallabanalysis.com. And I'm trying to think, if somebody is interested in getting an HTMA test done, if you're a current student, there will be a site up very soon that's HTMA for students. And you'll be able to be paired with a practitioner for $199 total for a consult and the HTMA test itself, which is amazing. And you'll get to work with a really awesome practitioner. I have awesome featured practitioners for this first round. And if you are not a student and you're just interested in having an HTMA run, you can also just reach out to me at jensen@functionallabanalysis.com or on my Instagram, and I can get you set up with somebody since I'm not taking one-on-one clients frequently right now.
Perfect.
But I have plenty of people that would love to work with you.
Yes, and I'm excited about that directory. That'll be awesome. Can't wait to
Yeah,
see that.
awesome.
Well, thanks again, Jensen. I appreciate you hopping on today, and I'll post this to my Instagram feed. So if you have anyone that ever wants to listen in, they can go back and watch.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.